And are the surgeries usually able to be completed in one session?
That is our goal, and that was a change when I took over here in the U.S. The then standard was that surgeons would complete things in 2 surgeries, or so-called revisions. Now we call them, but we do those less than 1 in 20, where we have to do a revision to make it cosmetically acceptable.
And approximately how long does the surgery take if we're talking about male to female?
3.5 hours in our experience. There are locations where it can take as much as 7 hours to do one surgery. Yes, but under 4 hours for sure.
And then recovery time?
Depends what you define as recovery. A couple of days to be up and walking, 3 days in the hospital, and then 6 weeks for kind of a so-called full recovery, but 3 months before you can have sex.
Okay. And what about female to male?
Roughly same time period, although I would say the early parts are more delayed. There are just multiple stages usually in those procedures. It depends on what they're having. There are several different surgical options for female to males, and they have a lot more complications that are possible in each surgery.
So, and what is the process for you as far as what must the person have kind of gone through before you think they're essentially ready for surgery? Mostly mentally ready for surgery.
Mentally ready is, there are some who demand that it should be, surgery on demand. You have to realize the current model that we use is really pathologizing this as some sort of mental derangement, that why would anyone want to lose their penis kind of thing. And that's still a holdover from the 1980s when it was pathologized in many of the psychiatric manuals that are still in use today. So it's really unlike any other surgery in history that we require people to get mental health evaluations and then we question their mental sanity. So that gradually is fading as we realize that really what's unnatural is to assign people in one of 2 camps simply based on what their genitals look like at birth. There is no other measure in nature that is defined by just 2 choices. And this is what we do. It's a big fork in the road at birth, and it makes no sense biologically.
Well, biologically, you do have XY chromosome and XX chromosome. Is that a proper distinction in your mind to separate people based on chromosomes?
Absolutely not. It's a mess. And in fact, this is what the IOC struggled with. The International Olympic Committee struggled when they realized in the 1980s that these East German women were out-competing their peers as a result of doping. And they were receiving male hormones to bulk up their muscle mass. They decided that they needed to define what was a woman. And so they chromosomally tested, they measured hormone levels, tested all of their athletes, and guess what? 11 of the women that year had Y chromosomes, male chromosomes. So are they men? No. Why are they not men? Because they didn't respond to testosterone. They had testosterone, but their bodies lacked the receptors. Therefore, the body develops completely as female from externally. Now, internally, they still have testes. Internally, they're still producing testosterone. You see, there's no way. The point being, measuring biology, there are 9 different ways that you can measure biological sex. And chromosomes would be the simple and the easy answer, but God didn't make it that way. It is complex. And in fact, that's a very high percentage of newborns that are born with genitalia that you can't tell if it's a boy or a girl. So they convene ethicists and pediatricians and urologists all around to decide what it's going to be. And it's a very arbitrary measure. They simply look at the length of the phallus. And mind you, this could be XX individuals. And they say, well, it's long enough, you're going to be raised as a boy. And if it's short enough, you're going to have some surgery and be raised as a girl. And that's how arbitrary sex assignment is at birth.
So wouldn't sex assignment be less arbitrary if it was based on chromosomes?
Oh, absolutely not, because you get it wrong. Well, for one, if you did chromosomes at birth, all those athletes that have female genitalia, mind you, they have vulva, they have breasts. These are athletes that had Y chromosomes. Are you going to call them men? You're going to raise them as men because they have a Y chromosome? No.
So is that intersex? Is that what you would refer to that as?
One of the many, many conditions of intersex. That's correct.
Okay.
Intersex is important because intersex, really what it is genital diversity. There is diversity in the genitalia formation.
But most trans people are not intersex, correct?
No, but there's a good number that are.
Okay. So for everyone else, what's going on with them? It's not intersex.
It's intersex, but it depends on what you call intersex. There's also another whole subcategory of intersex conditions that are not even yet defined medically, but they have to do with things like very short spermatic cords that don't allow sufficient production of testosterone. And those are not even defined in the intersex categories. In other words, we just don't really, there's diversity in genital formation, there's diversity, so it really hardly makes sense that the brain might not be represented by diversity.
So what do you think is going on with the vast majority of transgender people that you're seeing? What do you think is going on with these people? What is the cause of it?
Well, if you want to say cause of it, you would imply that implies pathology. But I would argue that actually what it is a manifestation of the fact that gender identity is diverse, and that most of us are not macho 10 on the gender scale, or ones, not a perfect, Barbie type figure if you're female assigned. Most of us are somewhere in between. And that's our gender identity. Now, transgender people are the 4s and maybe 5s, the 6s, are the people that just don't, they feel that they need to make that change completely, biologically, hormonally, and even genitalia-wise. So it just is what it is. It's part of planetary diversity, and it's been here since the beginning of time. I mean, this is nothing that's new.
But you don't think there's any scientific explanation for it?
Sure there is. There's all kinds of science. Again, many of these individuals have very, very short cords, spermatic cords, or they have very low levels of testosterone, or they have, but it's looking for the one, the key that opens up the box. No, you're not going to find that. Mm-hmm. Not one single, entity. Here it is. It's not like the patient that comes in with abdominal pain and the surgeon pulls a porcupine out of their abdomen. It's not that way.
Because there's just too many different potential explanations. Is that?
That's absolutely right. It's as complex and we're just beginning to peel the layers of the onion off. This is just something society's finally kind of grappling with, is this idea, this artificial notion of maleness and femaleness. It's not healthy. In fact, I'd argue with you that a lot of our problems with male violence, it has to do not so much with testosterone, because female to males run levels of testosterone that are sky high. They're in the thousands, higher than a biological male, a cisgender male, and yet you rarely see evidence of rage.
But they also have estrogen, though, right?
No, the estrogen is completely suppressed. But cisgender men have estrogen. You have estrogen. Cisgender men have estrogen today. Cisgender females have testosterone. And of course, it does have effects on behavior, but it's a part of biology. We're much more alike than we are different. 99.7% of our DNA is identical, male and female.
But you cannot underestimate the significance of hormones, right? And how that influences behavior and moods.
Hormones are one big influence, absolutely, but a bigger influence is gender expectations and gender roles that are assigned by society. When Westerners came to to the country now known as Thailand. They call it Siam at the day 100 years ago. They said, well, the men and women the women were so ugly. They said, oh, these women are just, because their hair was short, the clothes were just basically like the boys. And they just looked around and said, well, you need to grow your hair long. You need to put on makeup. You need to have dresses, not, trousers. And suddenly, so what we do with these gender roles, these artificial rules, is we pull the sexes apart. We make the genders so different that it leads to angst. I mean, it's difficult. It's these rules. I like some of the rules, but the rules are rules, and rules are meant to be broken. They aren't.
But it isn't just.
They aren't really forced.
But I think you'd agree it isn't just societal. I mean, I think there's plenty of studies where you put the little boy in the room, and there's boy toys on the left side and girl toys on the right side, and he gravitates toward the boy toys, and the girl gravitates toward the girl toys. So, to say that it's all society, I'm not sure that that's quite accurate.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's a huge amount of biology. We know this and that's the whole point. That's my whole point about these kids. They had the kid they had a botched circumcision, if you remember this. He had a twin brother in Canada. They botched the circumcision, and then the doctor at the time, Dr. Money, decided we'll just reinforce the kids. It's all about nurture. So we'll just reinforce and tell him he's a girl, raise him, have surgery, make her a girl. And that's how they raised him. Well, obviously that experiment went very, very badly. The kid ended up committing suicide, as did his brother, when he later came out as male, and then found out the truth, which was hidden from him for all those years. You really can't hide that nature.
There's those stories out there, and they're horrendous, but we're still talking about a very, very small percentage of children that's affecting. So I'm just wondering, should we be taking those very rare cases and extending that to something beyond that suddenly affects 100%?
No, I'm actually just doing the opposite. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that you don't narrowly define kids. You embrace them, and you allow them to, you don't set these expectations, because we really do set expectations for girls and boys very early on.
So tell me if you were raising a child today, tell me how you would raise that child differently than perhaps you did yourself or others are doing today.
Sure. Well, this is going to be, I sometimes give a talk titled Gender 3018. And looking at how gender might be valued in the future, and instead of assigning pink and blue and things like that, it's the easy thing to do, but it's very difficult to ungender a child's upbringing if you even try to do it. But I think that
we should start by why is it important to ungender them to begin with? Let's start with that, and then we'll go into the how.
Well, I don't necessarily say I would ungender kids from the beginning, but I would look at each assignment, each decision you make, and try to uncouple it from male and female a bit. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we've actually done a pretty good job of that with girls. Girls have much more fluidity along the gender spectrum. Girls can wear pants, girls can act masculine, and we don't really look. Where we really have trouble in society is with little boys.
But again, I'm looking for what the problem is that you're solving. I mean, I get the problem
male violence. Male violence. Let's start there.
Well, if you think that how is this going to solve the problem of male violence?
Oh, it's the key.
Okay.
Key.
All right. Walk me through that then.
Read my book then. It's the key. Male, it just starts with expectations that are there. So that we've basically been a society that has been in a state of military conflict for the last 2,000 years. And so the
2000,
unhealthy,
probably even longer than that. No,
probably even longer than that.
I mean, doesn't violence go back to the origins of man essentially?
Yes and no. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we see our little boys as potential soldiers is an unhealthy way of seeing them. And little boys can be compassionate, they can be sweet, they can be emotional, they can be loving. Some of it's biological. You can boys are going to gravitate towards rough things, maybe, or trucks and things that are typically we associate as being more masculine. I don't think any of that's bad, but I think that emulating seeing boys as seeing uh, uh, very macho manifestations as being the pinnacle of maleness, that is the unhealthy ideal that we need to slowly lose track of.
Yeah. Well, can I just address that for a second? Say that
what I'm questioning is that what we do now, it's not so much not so much the maleness, the macho maleness that is unhealthy, but rather the fact that feminine behavior in boys is what's severely punished.
But doesn't this come down just to good parenting? I mean, I was raised with all the maleness you could imagine, with sports and guns. We had machine guns that we played with. We had cowboys and Indians that we played with. But I also had good parents. So I knew the difference between right and wrong. And just because I was playing with a toy gun didn't mean that I was going to go use it on my neighbor.
Right. Well, that's a whole nother, that's a whole lengthy discussion, having two parents and being good and all that stuff. But there are subtle pressures for boys to act out, and they don't have healthy feminine outlets. That's my point. Is that you can if they had more artistic allowance, if retail stores and dress and behavior allowed for more softness, I think the world would be better off.